Marcus Thompson had built TechFlow, industries from a small startup in his garage to a billion-dollar corporation in just 15 years. The company's headquarters now stretched across 3 gleaming towers in downtown Seattle, housing over 8,000 employees who manage cloud computing services for some of the world's largest corporations. On this particular Tuesday morning in October, Marcus stood in his corner office on the 42nd floor, watching the sunrise paint the city in golden hues. He had no idea that in just 3 hours, his entire empire would be hanging by a thread. The trouble began at 9:47 a.m. when Sarah Chun, the chief technology officer, burst through Marcus's office door without knocking. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, and her face was pale with panic. "Marcus, we have a situation," she said, her voice shaking. "The entire cloud infrastructure is failing." "All of it." Marcus felt his coffee cup slip from his fingers, the hot liquid splashing across his mahogany desk. "What do you mean, all of it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah pulled out her tablet, showing him a sea of red warning indicators. "Every server farm, every data center, every backup system. They're all going offline one by one. It started with the West Coast servers, and now it's spreading like a virus across the entire network. We're losing everything." The magnitude of the disaster hit Marcus like a freight train. TechFlow managed the data for over 2 million businesses worldwide. Banking systems, hospital networks, government databases, social media platforms, all of them depended on TechFlow servers to stay online. If the entire system collapsed, it wouldn't just destroy his company. It would trigger a global economic catastrophe. Marcus grabbed his phone and called an emergency meeting. Within minutes, the executive conference room was filled with department heads, all talking at once. The head of operations reported that client calls were flooding in from around the world. The finance director warned that they could lose hundreds of millions of dollars in the first hour alone. The legal counsel mentioned potential lawsuits that could bankrupt them. "How long until we can fix this?" Marcus asked Sarah, trying to keep his voice steady. Sarah looked down at her tablet, her hands trembling slightly. "That's the problem, Marcus. We don't know what's causing it. Our best engineers are looking into it, but the failure is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's not a cyber attack, not a hardware malfunction, not a software bug. The systems are just dying." The room fell silent except for the constant buzzing of phones as more clients called in desperation. Marcus watched through the conference room's glass walls as employees throughout the building rushed around in panic. Computer screens displayed error messages, and the usual hum of productive work had been replaced by urgent conversations and the sound of keyboards clicking frantically. Dr. James Wellington, the company's chief scientist and one of Marcus's oldest friends, spoke up from the corner of the room. "I've been analyzing the pattern of failures," he said, adjusting his thick glasses. "It's not random. There's a sequence to how the servers are going offline, almost like someone or something is systematically shutting them down from the inside." "Are you saying this is sabotage?" Marcus asked, his heart racing. "I don't know what I'm saying," James admitted. "But whatever is happening, it's beyond our current understanding. We need help, and we need it fast." Marcus looked around the room at the faces of the people who had helped him build this empire. These were some of the smartest minds in technology, graduates from MIT, Stanford, and Harvard. They had solved impossible problems before, created revolutionary systems, and built a company that was the envy of Silicon Valley. Yet now they all looked defeated, helpless in the face of this mysterious catastrophe. The wall-mounted screens around the conference room showed real-time data about the company's systems. Red warnings flashed continuously as more servers went offline. The number of affected clients climbed steadily: 50,000, 100,000, 500,000. Each number represented businesses that were losing money, hospitals that couldn't access patient records, banks that couldn't process transactions. Marcus's phone rang. It was the governor of California, followed by calls from senators, the Federal Reserve, and even the White House. The failure wasn't just affecting TechFlow. It was creating ripple effects throughout the entire economy. Stock markets were already beginning to fluctuate as news of the outage spread. Sir, interrupted Jennifer Walsh, the head of public relations, the media has picked up the story. CNN is running a breaking news alert, and social media is exploding with reports of system failures worldwide. We need to make a statement. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building. How do you explain to the world that you don't know what's happening to your own company? How do you tell millions of people that their data, their livelihoods, their very way of life might be at risk because of a problem you can't even understand? Through the conference room windows, Marcus could see news helicopters circling the building. Reporters were already gathering in the lobby downstairs, and his security team was struggling to maintain order. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him like a crushing force. 8,000 employees depended on him for their jobs. Millions of businesses trusted him with their most critical data. The global economy was counting on him to fix this, but for the first time in his career, Marcus Thompson had absolutely no idea what to do. The clock on the wall read 11:15 a.m. Less than 90 minutes had passed since the crisis began, but it felt like a lifetime. And somehow, Marcus knew that the worst was yet to come. By noon, the situation had escalated from a crisis to a complete nightmare. Marcus Thompson stood in the company's main server room, surrounded by dozens of engineers frantically typing on laptops and tablets. The massive server towers that usually hummed with quiet efficiency now flashed angry red lights like warning beacons in the darkness. The air conditioning system worked overtime, but the room still felt suffocatingly hot from the stress and panic of everyone inside. We've lost 80% of our global network, announced Kevin Park, the head of network operations, his voice hoarse from hours of shouting orders. The East Coast servers went down 15 minutes ago. And now we're seeing failures in Europe and Asia. It's like dominoes falling, one after another. Marcus watched the main monitoring screen, which looked like a map of the world gradually going dark. Green dots representing active servers were disappearing at an alarming rate, replaced by ominous red X marks. Each disappearing dot represented millions of dollars in lost revenue and thousands of affected businesses. Sarah Chun approached him with her latest findings, her usually pristine business suit now wrinkled from crawling under server racks. Marcus, I've discovered something disturbing, she said quietly, pulling him aside. The failure isn't just random system crashes. Someone or something is accessing our most secure administrative protocols and systematically shutting down each server farm. You're saying this is a coordinated attack? Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. It has to be, but here's the strange part. There's no evidence of any external breach. No unauthorized logins, no malware signatures, nothing that would indicate hackers from the outside. It's as if the commands are coming from inside our own system, but that should be impossible. The implications of Sarah's words sent a chill down Marcus's spine. If the attack was coming from inside, it meant either someone within the company was responsible, or their security had been compromised in ways they didn't understand. Either possibility was terrifying. Dr. Wellington hurried over to them, his tablet clutched tightly in his hands. I've been analyzing the shutdown sequence, he said breathlessly. There's definitely a pattern, but it's not following any logical network topology. The servers aren't being shut down based on geography or system architecture. Instead, it seems almost random, yet purposeful. What do you mean? Marcus demanded. Well, if I were trying to cause maximum damage, I would target the core infrastructure nodes first, the servers that support the most critical systems. But whoever is doing this is following a completely different strategy. They're shutting down servers in a sequence that maintains just enough functionality to keep us hoping we can fix it, while ensuring that every minute that passes causes exponentially more damage. The psychological warfare aspect of the attack made Marcus's blood run cold. This wasn't just about destroying tech flow. Someone was deliberately torturing them, making them watch their life's work crumble. Piece by piece, his phone buzzed constantly with calls from increasingly powerful people. The Secretary of Commerce, the CEO of Amazon, the President of the New York Stock Exchange. Everyone wanted answers that Marcus simply didn't have. He had stopped taking the calls. letting his assistant field them while he focused on finding a solution on the other side of the server room. A group of the company's best cybersecurity experts huddled around a workstation, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of multiple monitors. Marcus walked over to hear their discussion. "I've never seen anything like this," said Maria Rodriguez, the head of cybersecurity, shaking her head in frustration. "The attack signature is completely unique. It's not using any known exploits, not following any recognized hacking patterns. It's like someone has found a completely new way to break into our systems." "Maybe it's not a person at all," suggested Tom Liu, one of the senior security analysts. "What if it's some kind of artificial intelligence that's learned how to manipulate our systems in ways we never anticipated?" The room fell silent at Tom's words. The idea of a rogue AI systematically destroying their infrastructure was the stuff of science fiction. But given the inexplicable nature of the attack, it was starting to seem like a possibility. Marcus felt his legs go weak. He grabbed onto a nearby server rack for support, the weight of the disaster crushing down on him. Outside the server room, he could see employees packing their personal belongings, already preparing for the inevitable layoffs that would follow if they couldn't resolve the crisis. The company's stock price had plummeted by 60% in the past 3 hours, wiping out billions of dollars in value. Jennifer Walsh, the PR director, appeared at his side with an urgent expression. "Marcus, we can't delay any longer. The media is demanding a statement, and rumors are spreading that could make things even worse. Some news outlets are reporting that this might be an act of cyber terrorism. Others are saying we're covering up a massive data breach. We need to get ahead of the narrative." Marcus nodded reluctantly. He knew she was right, but what could he possibly say? How do you explain to the world that your company is under attack by an unknown force using methods that shouldn't exist? As if the situation couldn't get any worse, Kevin Park's voice cut through the chaos from across the room. "Marcus, we have a new problem. The backup power systems at our Chicago facility are failing. If we lose power there, we'll lose the last of our North American operations." Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The Chicago facility was their crown jewel, housing the most critical infrastructure that kept their biggest clients operational. If they lost Chicago, it would be game over not just for TechFlow, but potentially for large portions of the global digital economy. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Maybe an hour, possibly less," Kevin replied grimly. Sarah walked up to Marcus with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Marcus. We've tried everything. Every protocol, every emergency procedure, every backup system. Nothing is working. I think we need to consider the possibility that TechFlow is finished." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. This was the company he had built from nothing, the dream he had pursued relentlessly for 15 years. The thought of watching it die while he stood helplessly by was unbearable. Around the server room, the frantic activity was beginning to slow as people ran out of options. Engineers sat slumped over their keyboards, their faces reflecting the same defeated expression that Marcus felt in his heart. The red warning lights continued to flash, marking the countdown to the end of everything he had worked for, but even as despair began to settle over the room like a suffocating blanket, Marcus refused to give up entirely. Somewhere in the building there had to be someone with an idea, a solution, a miracle. He just had to find them before time ran out completely. While chaos consumed the upper floors of TechFlow Industries, life in the building's basement continued at a much different pace. Roberto Delgado pushed his cleaning cart down the narrow hallway that connected the building's mechanical rooms, maintenance areas, and storage facilities. At 62 years old, Roberto had been TechFlow's head janitor for 8 years, arriving every morning at 5 a.m. and staying until the building was spotless. Unlike the executives 40 floors above him, Roberto moved with calm precision. He had seen corporate crises before during his decades of working in office buildings, and he knew that panic never solved anything. As he cleaned the basement break room, he could hear the stressed voices of employees echoing down from the upper floors through the ventilation system. But he maintained his steady routine. Roberto was proud of his work. He took care of this building like it was his own home, knowing every pipe, every electrical panel, and every corner that others overlooked. The executives might not know his name, but Roberto understood TechFlow's operations in ways that surprised even him. During his 8 years here, he had quietly observed the company's growth, listened to countless conversations, and developed a deep appreciation for the technology that powered the business. What most people didn't know about Roberto was that he had once been an electrical engineer in his native Colombia before immigrating to the United States 25 years ago. Language barriers and credential recognition issues had forced him to start over in America, but his love for understanding how complex systems worked had never dimmed. In his spare time, he read technical manuals, watched online engineering courses, and maintained an impressive workshop in his garage where he repaired electronics for neighbors. As Roberto emptied trash cans near the building's main electrical room, he noticed something unusual. The power consumption indicators on the main panel were fluctuating wildly, showing massive spikes and drops that didn't match the building's normal patterns. His engineering background immediately told him something was seriously wrong with the electrical load distribution. Curious, Roberto used his master key to enter the electrical room and examine the readings more closely. What he saw made his eyes widen in surprise. The power draw was oscillating in a very specific pattern, almost like the building's electrical systems were being controlled by some external force. It reminded him of something he had studied years ago in his engineering courses, but he couldn't quite place what it was. Roberto pulled out his old smartphone and called his son. "Diego, are you busy?" he asked in Spanish. Diego Delgado was 26 years old and worked as a freelance computer programmer from his small apartment across town. Unlike his father, Diego had grown up in America and had been able to pursue his passion for technology without the barriers that had held Roberto back. He had graduated summa cum laude from the University of Washington with degrees in computer science and electrical engineering, but his introverted personality and preference for working alone had led him to freelance rather than join a big corporation. "Hi, Papa," Diego replied, looking up from the 3 monitors on his desk where he was debugging code for a small startup. "What's wrong? You sound concerned." Roberto explained what he was seeing in the electrical room, describing the unusual power fluctuations in technical terms that most people wouldn't understand. But Diego understood perfectly. His father had been his first teacher in both electrical engineering and problem-solving, even though they had learned together as Roberto's English improved over the years. "That's very strange, Papa," Diego said thoughtfully. "Can you send me some pictures of the readings?" Roberto awkwardly held his phone up to photograph the electrical meters and indicators, then sent the images to his son. Within minutes, Diego called back, his voice tight with concern. "Papa, I think I know what this might be." "Have you heard about the computer problems they're having upstairs?" Roberto nodded, even though his son couldn't see him. "Yes, everyone is very upset. They say all the computers are broken." Diego was quiet for a moment, and Roberto could hear him typing rapidly on his keyboard. "Papa, I think what you're seeing in the electrical room might be connected to their computer problems. The power fluctuations you're showing me look like they might be caused by some kind of electromagnetic interference. If someone was trying to attack their computer systems, this might be how they would do it." Roberto felt a surge of excitement as pieces of a puzzle began fitting together in his mind. "You mean someone is using electricity to break the computers?" "Possibly," Diego replied. "It's a very sophisticated type of attack called an electromagnetic pulse injection. Most people wouldn't even think to look for it because it attacks the hardware through the power systems instead of attacking the software directly." "Papa, I need to see more information about their network setup and power distribution. Do you think you could help me?" Roberto looked around the electrical room, considering his son's request. He had access to every part of the building, including areas that most employees never saw. Over the years, he had become familiar with the building's infrastructure in ways that even the engineers might not fully appreciate. "I can help," Roberto said quietly. But Diego, if this is as serious as you think, shouldn't we tell someone upstairs? Diego paused, and Roberto could hear uncertainty in his son's voice. Papa, I'm just a freelance programmer working from my apartment. These people upstairs are some of the smartest technology experts in the world. Why would they listen to us? Roberto understood his son's hesitation. Despite Diego's exceptional intelligence and education, he had always struggled with self-confidence in professional settings. Growing up as the son of a janitor had made him feel like an outsider in the world of high-tech corporations. Even though his technical abilities were extraordinary. Maybe they won't listen, Roberto admitted. But if you're right about this, and we don't try to help, what happens then? Diego was quiet for a long moment. Roberto could hear the sounds of his son moving around his apartment, probably pacing as he did when he was thinking through complex problems. Okay, Papa, Diego finally said. Let me do some research first. Can you quietly gather more information about the building's power systems and maybe find out more details about what's happening with their computers? But please be careful. Don't let anyone know what you're doing until we're sure about what we're dealing with. Roberto smiled, feeling a sense of purpose that he hadn't experienced in years. Don't worry, Mio. No one ever pays attention to the janitor anyway. I can.